When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode. Yeah, it's definitely exploding. I see the growth. My colleagues in Southern California, they're getting calls from now direct clients because you're having a shift in the industry right now. We all know, Allied and G4S, and now some of these guys want to go to smaller boutique companies like what AE Solutions used to be, that personal touch. And it's definitely exploding at this moment in time. From what I'm hearing, it's starting to go crazy because everybody's going back to work, and everybody's getting vaccinated. The COVID-19, the infection rates are dropping now. There's sort of more controls with therapies and antibiotics and whatnot. So it sounds like we're getting close to going back.
It sounds like it. Yeah, it does. I kind of said that like 10 times now during this whole pandemic. So don't listen to me on it, though.
Okay. Now, here's a question just for the young generation getting in the business. What were the common complaints that you would receive from clients about what they did not like in an EP, executive protection agent, that worked for them? What was the things you heard the most from your clients?
Well, that's kind of a tough one too, because you always remember some, and that might not be the most recent one or the ones you heard the most or whatever, right? But one of the biggest problems that I think we had was when we find some agents that we put a lot of time and money into teach, and they leave really fast, right? They kind of jump ship from one company to the next company and stuff like that. That's always a tough one, right? Because one of the things that clients really like is stability, and especially if it's people that they kind of like, or people that they kind of feel good around, or people that kind of doesn't stand out and stuff like that. Everybody kind of like to see the same faces. And it's part of what we used to sell in our value add, right? When you and I started, I'm sure that if you went to some of the big EP teams, they could say, well, if people stay here their whole life, or they stay here 5 or 10 years, right? Now, if we can keep people 2 years, I think we've been pretty successful, right? Sure. But it's also a question about, when you and I started, there wasn't a lot of jobs out there. So you were really happy with the one job you had, and you would kind of die for that job and whatever, right? Now there's a bigger need for EP agents, right? So of course it's easier for them to shop around, and they should shop around if the companies doesn't treat them right. So that's definitely a big one. Another one that is always kind of hard is if people are too over the top. People come in and all of a sudden they all want to be the bodyguard. They all want to kind of like walk the principal. They all want to be in clothes and stuff like that, right? That's always a hard one as well. So those two are probably two ones that I've kind of paid attention to.
I've heard too, like nothing. I don't want to take anything away from our military special forces guys and gals, but I heard a lot of clients really didn't want that because they were just too rigid. They didn't blend in very well because they're almost too robotic. And I heard that was, from my experience being in the industry, they kind of would rather have a young kid like a Gavin Becker product of an agent that was more teachable and coachable to become a good agent. And so I've been hearing a lot of that in the last 5 to 10 years, especially in Silicon Valley, which you had many accounts down there running.
Oh yeah. Well, I used to have all these like pocket theories about which were the best background we could come in with.
Right.
And every time I was sure I got it, here we go, just hire this type of people, I got proven wrong time after time, right?
Sure.
And the last many years, I've actually switched around on that and said, I don't really care what background people come from if they can do the job, right? Okay. There are some backgrounds that gives you a deeper toolbox, or a bigger toolbox to do the job, right? But if
Sure.
you can do the job, I try not to go in and say this background or this background is better,
Right.
because it comes down to the people, right? And some of the best agents I've worked with around the world have had zero backgrounds.
Right.
So the best agents I've worked with and learned from, and whatever, has been the most hardcore special operators you can think about. And a lot of other government people have taught me a lot, and so has people who never worked in security before. They kind of, like myself, fell in here by accident, right?
Accident.
Yeah. So I hear that a lot, but in
Right.
my world, I'm kind of like, and I know it's a luxury to say, it's more the people than anything
Right.
else of what
More
they
the
work for.
the right personality match up with the client.
Yeah, exactly. And it also comes down to, when you say the special operators and stuff like that, you also have to remember that every detail is different,
Right.
right? And a lot of the bigger details, like the ones I've always been very kind of involved in, we
Yeah.
really need a big span of different types of agents, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, here's a question about going back to the days you're a CEO of AS Solutions. What was the biggest factor for you to go to work every day to build your baby of AS Solutions? What was your motivator?
It's really funny, because people who know me really well will probably kind of laugh and say, yeah, he's not really all there. I truly, truly, truly love what I do.
Okay. The passion.
I really like the protection and security business and aspect. I like the problem that we get to solve. I like helping our clients. And just as important, I like all the people that I work with, right? It was kind of like, I don't know, I used to call AS Solution my group of misfits that had all kind of joined together. And one of the things that I missed the most was that most people that worked with me in AS Solution and the company culture that we had was that we always had fun, right? It
Okay.
didn't matter how busy we were. It didn't matter how serious the assignments were. It didn't matter how much was going on, right? There was always time to smile and laugh and stuff like that, right? And that I've heard from a lot of people, kind of were one of the main reasons why they chose to come and work for me. Because you have to remember, Mark, at the end of the day, AS Solution had a great reputation. We did some great things, but I'm just one guy. It
Right.
was right. It was everybody that I was lucky enough that wanted to come work for me that really did it. I might have done a lot of stuff a long time ago, right? But giving the opportunity from people to leave the military or come out and do fun stuff and exciting stuff and stuff like that, that was a big factor. And I'd say probably the camaraderie, the people, stuff like that it was the biggest motivator.
So you almost like created like a football team or a sports team at AS Solutions, and you guys were teammates, and that's how you treated each other as teammates. And but I never heard anything of all the people that you've had work under you. I've never heard one really negative thing about your leadership. They always had fun, and you guys were always doing pictures in Silicon Valley, eating and having fellowship with each other, getting to know each other. It seemed like it was a really tight knit group of people, like a family.
It was, and I think we still are in many ways.
Sure.
People part ways and they go and do different things, and people get busy and whatever, right? But I mean, there's still plenty of networks, and there's still plenty of stuff going on. I'm in contact with most of the people that work there and stuff like that. But it's also one of the things, Mark. At the end of the day, I can't. There's a limit to how much I can pay people,
Right.
Limit to how much I can motivate them or whatever. But I kind of lived and led by a few guiding principles, right? And my main guiding principle on the personnel side was that we as a company need to do the best we can possibly do for the people that we hire. It's really that simple, right? If we can do the best that we possibly can with what we have, then let's do that. And then I always had this thing as well about we try to defeat evil with good. So every time there was stuff that was negative or people came with too many negative problems or whatever. We try to find a good solution, right? Because at the end of the day, the people that go to work for me as the CEO of AS Solution or for the company or whoever they go to work for, they're the ones that the clients see. So if they're motivated and happy and whatever, it usually reflects on the company. If they're feeling mistreated or they don't like the company they work for or they don't like the CEO or their supervisor or whatever, right? Eventually the client's going to pick up on it. And then it comes back to you, right? It's not me that the clients see.
That's okay. That makes sense. Yeah. Totally. Very profound.
But it also have a limit to it, though. You cannot run a 100,000 employee company that way, probably.
No.
Right. So there's a limit to how much you can do, right? And as we got bigger and bigger, of course, the distance from me to the people on the actual protection details got bigger and bigger as well. And you know, luckily, everybody likes to remember the good things. But we had our problems too. I mean, we were struggling like every other security company, just like everybody else.
You have your bad days and good days like any other business.
Right.
Because you're dealing with people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know offline we're talking about one specialty you're going to get into with your EP Access is teaching people how to work with kids. And that was like a little special spot for you. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, you know, a lot of protected details that I've worked with have family programs. And now we mentioned kids. Kids is just one of the things that we're going to dive into. But it's something that's near to everybody. And, you know, working with kids, when you talk about it on an EP level, is like, oh, we need a protection team. Okay. We need to take them to school. And then we need to sit outside of school. And then we need to take them home when school is over. And if they go somewhere, we follow them around.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Right.
I get it. It's just not good enough, right?
Right.
If you ever worked with kids, or ran details that works with kids, there are so many things like where do you draw the boundary? If you're out with them for after school activities and let's say the soccer ball rolls over to you, is it okay to kick the soccer ball back? Or should you go over and kind of like try to be the referee, right? Where the boundaries, do you be an agent or do you try to become a parent, right? Do you help out with whatever if you guard babies, or don't you help out with whatever there is, right? What's the nanny's job? Where's the cutover to the EP agent? Just the whole driving part, right? What is kind of the standard procedure driving with kids? The what do you call it? The chair that you put in that the babies sit in.
The baby chair.
Yeah, the baby chair. How do you put that in and how do you take it out? I mean, if you drive around with teenagers, right? Are they if they put off and are they playing loud music in the back? Is that kind of like disturbing you when you're driving? Or if they have their friends in, how do you do that? And what do you comment on? What don't you comment on? And stuff like that. And that's all the stuff that is so hard to learn unless you go out to people that you know and say, hey, I know you work with kids for a long time. What is your 10 biggest pet peeves that you want to give to somebody else? And do that to 10 or 15 agents who work with kids their whole life, right? And all of a sudden you have a training program that I don't think anybody else kind of are doing, right? And if they are, hit me up so we can kind of like do some really cool stuff. And it's not only kids. It can also be pets. It can be
pets,
anything that our principal have that's kind of out of the ordinary, right? I mean, one of the things I always wanted to see is a lot of our clients go to, and I fell into that many years ago in one of the big details where our principals would go to all these like almost expeditionary places, like the Cradle of Life in Ethiopia, gorilla watching in Congo and stuff like that. And you almost have to set those up like an expedition or a military operation or whatever. And nobody really teaches that either, right? So as we get around to it in EP Access, stuff like this is stuff that I hope we can kind of put together. But kids is definitely high on the list.
Yeah, you gave me a flashback of working in Beverly Hills with a Middle East royal family member who was a kid. And I just hung out at the park, watched the dogs, and played in the grass. And that's about all I did. Yep. And then you had Middle East culture, so understanding the hierarchy, how that works, their chain of command, and If I had probably got, I don't know, at least 10 years experience working with Middle East royal families. So you understand Sharia law, culture is huge. And that culture is so different from corporate culture. And what you do with the corporate family in America and in a state is so different from what you do with the family traveling, living in a hotel, and so many different protocols. And you have valet, and it's two different animals. And a lot of people think they're going to just jump into that.
Exactly. And you have to remember that you learned that either by probably making a lot of mistakes or having some really smart agents that came before you teach you that, or you have to kind of like figure it out on your own, right?
Yeah, figure it out on your own. And most of the time I was by myself, because if you're two adult nannies, well, the nannies discipline the kids, and you learn in their culture, you don't even touch them.
Nope.
You let the nannies touch them, and you're just there to make sure they're safe. And then all of a sudden the kids break up in a fight in the back seat. Are you supposed to get involved, break it up, or you leave them alone?
Right.
And it's like, there's so many, like you say, so many details. And I saw so many people getting rolled off of details because they didn't understand that culture. And the handlers said they got to be gone. The mother said no. It's like they're done.
Yeah, no, and if I can help with that through having people who are experts in this, kind of like put some training classes together, that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, I put the word out there for people so they can reach out to you. Also, I want to hit on you authored 2 books while you're at AES Solutions. What was the driver behind the book publishing? Was that just something that you want to do, is write a couple books, or was that part of your business model, of growing the business?
No, actually, it started up with us back in the days building a pretty robust program of blogs. I don't know if you remember, but we used to write a blog every 2 weeks that would come out. And at the end, right before we ended it, when it was at its highest, we would have about 250,000 reads a year on our blogs, right?
Wow.
So it became a big thing. And over the years, I think myself have written close to 400 blogs, and I've been part of writing 400 blogs, right? So the beautiful thing about this, and this is a big kind of learning lesson for me, is when you sit down and you write a blog about something, that really makes you think through, how do I do this, right? And when you think through, how do I do this, you become pretty organized when you write it down in a blog form, right?
Right.
So that means that it helped me structure kind of my whole business, writing all these blogs, right? Because it really made me think about, how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we do this? What's our experience on this, right? So it was, in so many ways, kind of a blessing for me that we started that, because you have to remember, I barely finished high school, right? So I never have a business degree and whatever. There are probably smarter ways to do it, but for me, it worked really well, right? And at some point in time, we sat here with all these information for these blogs, and we started kicking the idea around, kind of like putting it together and writing a book based on that. And that was the first book about corporate executive protection. And then once you started doing that, you kind of realize that there's so much more you kind of want to talk about. So the second book kind of came about pretty easy after the first one, right? So I'm actually about to start a rework on book number 1, because that was written back when I owned the company completely, and it's all about the corporate executive protection. So I'm starting kind of to redo everything and see if it's worth doing a second version of it, or rewriting it.
Yeah, I know the industry colleagues I have out there have spoken highly of both books, and they said that it was very insightful just to know how to run a program or get in a program and how to survive a program. And it was a great marketing tool, basically, for you guys getting in the door of many people.
It is, but you also have to remember that before our books, and I'm sure other people have done it now, there was a lot of books about people's personal experiences, and there was a lot of books about being an agent, right? There's not a lot of people who actually sat down and figured out how do you prepare for an RFP, or how do you help your clients put out an RFP out for on executive protection, right? And Brian and myself, who wrote the first book, has been lucky enough to kind of go through that process, good and bad, right?
Sure.
We became okay at it or pretty good at it, depending on who you ask. But
Right.
in the beginning, we were horrible at it, like everybody else, right? But we were lucky enough that we did a bunch of notes going through the process, and luckily, Brian is way more organized than I am, so we could find all notes when we kind of needed to sit down and do the books.
Wow. I mean, you've accomplished so many things in your career in the bodyguard world, having a security company. And what was the thing that kept you fearless through the process?
I don't know, man, because it's one of those things people always. So one of my favorite insecurities is I know all these really smart people who send me all these great articles about leadership, right?
Right.
And when you go out, you get asked all these like high-end leadership questions, and you kind of look at yourself inside. But what really happens, Mark, is for me, it's kind of like trying to do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And then it's also a question about knowing your trade craft and loving your trade craft. Because for me, it was always more important to do cool stuff and fun stuff than it was to make a bunch of money, right?
Interesting. Okay.
That kind of, in my mind, from a company perspective, keeps you fearless, right? Because, hey, maybe this worked, maybe it doesn't, but you know what? We tried it, we had fun doing it, and if the clients like it, they'll probably buy it again, right? On a personal level, being fearless is kind of like, I don't know, maybe in your DNA or whatever, because,
Sure.
I could easily retire and I could easily choose to go out and hunt and be out in the desert and do all the stuff that I enjoy to do in my off time, right?
Right.
But I don't think I'm done yet. I think I got at least 2 or 3 more companies in me before I retire. And one thing I know is I love our security industry. I love the business. And, back at it again. And I guess that's part of the fearlessness too,
Have you always been that way in your whole entire life? Because you obviously left Europe, moved to the United States, and hooked in with Chuck, and then launched AS with Microsoft. And you had to be, I mean, that's gutsy just to leave your country.
It is. It's one of those things where, a lot of people like to have a safety net. And a lot of people like to know that they can pay their mortgages and they know that they can send their kids to college and all of that. And I don't know, man, it's never been kind of like, and I know people now will say, oh, it's really easy for you because you made some money on some of your mergers and your acquisitions and all of that stuff. And yes, I did. So it's gotten easier. But living without a safety net, just go out and do it and figure it out and stuff like that is exciting. And it
invigorates the soul.
It is, but it's also a different kind of adrenaline, right?
Yeah.
Because you're kind of your own master, right? Good or bad. And I really, really like that. And I guess I've always been like that because I never really worked for anybody for a long time. In my whole life, I've always been more or less self-employed. So I guess it runs in the DNA. It's really weird because nobody else in my family is self-employed or whatever.
Because before the security, weren't you a DJ at one time, music and stuff?
I did. Back a long time ago, I was actually a DJ who played in nightclubs and stuff like that. I also had a short little career as a breakdancer that lasted about a day and a half. I figured out I don't really have rhythm to dance, so it didn't really work.
Oh, that's a good.
Sometimes here I find some old tunes on my iPad and sit here and do a little mix in my house. I still think it's kind of funny. So
you get that artistic, creative gene in you, as well as a very structured. You have the passion for security, you have the passion for business, but you're kind of like me. You have that entrepreneur spirit. Something just keeps on driving you, and you're not afraid to push that envelope over the edge because you know you'll make it. Not sure how, but you'll jump and onto the next project. Just how you're wired.
It is kind of how I'm wired, and I've always kind of made fun of the word of people who want to be an entrepreneur and all that, because I think it's such a kind of like glorified term and stuff like that. But then when you really dig inside your soul, it is kind of what it is, right? Because leaving AS Solution, I kind of had this idea that, I'm going to go out and get a job because I want to work and see how it is to be on the other side of EP.
Right.
And all of a sudden you kind of like have to like do job resumes and you have to apply for jobs and stuff like that. And I sit here and I look at myself and I go, it's much easier for me to just kind of like figure out what I want to do and start a new company and kind of go do what I really, really, truly is passionate about, right?
Sure.
And that's what I'm doing, right? So I guess it is the kind of entrepreneurship that just keeps going.
Well, I know you've inspired me, Christian, and I mean, I've launched out, did my own thing. Everybody said, you need to start your own flag. And you've been an inspiration to me. And I know many, many others in the business and the industry. And I know a lot of people respect you and admire you for what you've done for our industry. I mean, you've made EP sexy and hot when it's really 90% of the time boring and non-eventful.
Well, that's because I'm neither sexy or hot, so I had to do it with that I do. Thank you for that. Actually, that means a lot, right? But I also, at the same time, I've heard that before from people, right?
Sure.
And I'm so happy that is happening. But sometimes I don't really get it completely because I don't think we did a lot of things that were that different, right? I mean, what I did was, I was good at listening to my clients, figuring out what they need. We kind of created what they needed more than putting the client into what we already had created, right?
Right.
And then I had some really, really talented people helping me out along the way. I mean, you have to remember, I can barely read or write. English is my second language.
Wow.
And you mentioned before that I was probably really structured on the business end. No, I'm horribly not structured. My structure on myself is the worst, right? But I have a pretty good delivery. I have a pretty good imagination, and I'm pretty creative on solutions and stuff like that. And I guess I had a good eye for getting people to help me. So I hope I can kind of like carry that on to the next things. But I mean, chances of you keep getting it right is also small, which makes it a lot more exciting,
So, if you want to share anything with the audience, Christian, before we end this, what's your advice being Christian West to the industry and entrepreneur?
As an entrepreneur, I don't know, Mark. And as Christian West, my whole thing is let's have fun and do good work. And let's not get hung up on little details and not be too much social media cowboys and haters and whatever, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't do any of us any good, right? Just because you might not like what somebody's doing or you might not agree with this person or whatever, you don't have to kind of like go all out and go crazy about it, right? At the end of the day, there's more than enough room for everybody. The business is growing. There's some really talented people and there's tons and tons of opportunities. So I hope people would just jump in and do it and get out there and help our clients out and let's, I hate to say it, make the world a better place because it's so Silicon Valley. But let's make the industry better, right?
Amen to that. Yeah. I'm with you there with Facebook. I spend less and less time on Facebook and social media because it really doesn't do me much good unless I'm trying to find somebody for a job. Other than there's no reason for me really to hang out there because as you are, you're creating something new. Mm-hmm. I'm creating, and if we're busy creating and busy being productive and living our lives, we don't have time for hanging out on social media.
And I'm actually one of the few who like social media. I think it's very, very positive if you use it in a positive way.
Right.
I just don't kind of like want to do the other thing of going back and forth and being all negative and all of that stuff, right? So that's why I'm kind of like, whatever. People can do whatever they want.
Right.
So, but hey, man, it's always good talking to you. I had a lot of fun.
Thanks, Christian. I appreciate your time. I know it's valuable, and you were retired. Now you're launching a new project, and keep us in mind. And if anybody wants to help Christian on this project, reach out to him. Via
Please.
LinkedIn probably be the best way.
Yeah, LinkedIn or social media or even on the website, EP
Okay.
Access. So, yeah.
EP Access. He's going to be launching that soon, so stay tuned. And going to reach me, Fearless Mindset Podcast. And I'm on iHeartRadio now. And thanks for your time, Christian.